Okay. This is our chapter leaders meeting. It occurs monthly, I believe. Often we're joined by leaders of chapters from around the world. In recent months, we've had Zeynep from Turkey and Thierry from France, but there are lots of things going on in that part of the world right now, and so they're not with us. We do have Alexander from Romania, who is not that far from the current events that are distracting all of us all over the world. But our special guests are from India, Vaibhav Chabra and Ritesh Bilawa from Makers Asylum, currently in Goa, where they have an extraordinary makerspace in a former Portuguese mansion, I believe. For several years, they had a big makerspace in Mumbai, and they are about to become our newest e-NABLE chapter. And we're talking through a program to really kickstart them so they can become the hub of an e-NABLE network in India. So I'm going to ask everyone who's here to introduce themselves, and then we're going to talk about e-NABLE chapters and learn more about Makers Asylum. Ben, do you want to say hello?
Sure, I'll introduce myself. My name's Ben Rubin. I've been involved with e-NABLE for the last 3 years or so with media coordination, helping to connect the dots between different stories within the e-NABLE network, doing some chapter spotlights, and setting up these reoccurring community events. So this is one of 6 that occur monthly. Actually, we have 5 this month. And at the end of the meeting, if there's time, I'll share some of the other meetings with everybody as a way to set things up for more participation. So I'll pass it back to John if you want to introduce yourself and also introduce Dancer, who I can hear in the background.
Yeah, and I may have to excuse myself for a minute and let Dancer out, but here's Dancer. Dancer is an honorary member of the e-NABLE community. She specializes in animal issues. So I'm John Shull. I'm co-founder of e-NABLE, and I am currently the moderator of these monthly chapter events. And I already know everybody except for Ritesh, so I'm going to pass it to Alexander if he's with us. He's on mute and there's no camera, so we don't know.
Terribly sorry, I was being distracted. Hi, everybody. I'm Alexander. I've been a volunteer with the e-NABLE Hub for the past year or so, and I am mainly helping out with CAD design of various prosthetics.
Okay. And that brings us to Vaibhav, who I know from Fab Foundation meetings and other events in France. So Vaibhav, why don't you tell us your story, then you can introduce Ritesh, and then we will talk about, I think you have a tour of the Goa Makerspace for us, and then we'll talk about our possible plan of action. But I'm going to try to let the dog out. So excuse me for a moment.
Vaibhav, if you want to introduce yourself.
Sure. Hello, everyone. This is Vaibhav from Makers Asylum. Quick background, I'm a mechanical engineer and started Makers Asylum about 9 years back. Before that, I was working for a startup making mobile-based eye diagnostic devices at MIT Media Labs called e-NABLE. And then Makers Asylum started as a sort of passion project, a hobby to bring together folks in Mumbai together to start collaborating and making stuff. And since then, it's become a fun makerspace where people from all different backgrounds, artists, architects, designers, sort of come together and build their own projects and other things. We've also been able to build a lot of educational programs over the years. Primarily 3 of them. One is called DIY Hour for 8 years and above to start practicing making and getting hang of making. Then we have Innovation School for 13 years and above to start building some super cool robotics and electronics projects. And then after that, solving problems for their communities. And then we have the last one, which is called SDG School, where they're working on now sustainable solutions for the planet around the SDGs. So it's trying to solve problems around that. But all of this at the Makerspace at Makers Asylum, which Ritesh, after I'm done speaking, will give you a tour of, which is now in Goa and has a bunch of tools over there, everything from a woodworking shop to laser cutters, 3D printers that we've collected over the years, thanks to a lot of awesome people. And one of them is actually John Skull, because in the pandemic, we were doing some COVID relief work, and we started by making face shields in the beginning. And we ended up making 1 million of them thanks to a community of people that joined us in India and started contributing to it. It was quite crazy, but quite fun. And it was a beautiful, decentralized, distributed network of labs that worked together to make this happen. Then in the second wave, we worked on oxygen concentrators and worked on a design that we open source is called the M1902. And John over here really supported us and sent us some very critical sensors that allowed us to test our devices as well at this time. So I've known John for a while, but he's been super helpful through many, many ways over the years. So thank you once again, John. And we were able to build them and share that knowledge. We're also doing still a lot of work around oxygen concentrators and work in India, specifically in the area of repair and reuse, because during the second wave, almost about like 300,000 oxygen concentrators came to India, and then a bunch of them broke down because of various reasons like breakage and in transport, or zeolite getting short because of the humidity. So we were able to find solutions, and we're teaching folks as well how to repair them locally using locally available equipment. The last part, because one, of course, the programs and otherwise, a lot of people have sort of worked on projects around disability. And we had a program called STEAM Fabricarium that focused on like building solutions for the differently able communities. So for example, if you go into the project section and look at the first project over there, that was called Airstrom, is a guitar that a few folks hacked together to work for somebody who doesn't have a hand, for example. So for hand amputees, the first one right there. And then it went pretty crazy. A lot of folks used it and tried it out. Then similarly, there was another project. We worked on the e-NABLE hand as well, printed that. And thanks to the e-NABLE community, we learned a bunch in that space. And we're very, very excited to be an e-NABLE chapter now. So thank you once again for inviting us and getting us logged in. We're super excited to doing more work in that space. Yeah, there's a DIY prosthetic socket-based thing, which sort of allows you to swap hands, swap the use case of the hands. My Human Kit guys prototyped this when they were in India at the space. Yeah, that's it from my side. Ritesh, you want to give them, you want to introduce yourself, talk about it, and then show them around the lab. Though it's nighttime over here in India, it's about 10 p.m. at night. So the lab is shut, but we'll still give you a little bit of a tour of where he is at.
Sure. Let me just take you guys around. Yeah.
If you want to join on your phone and do that, that's also possible.
Yeah, I think that'll be much better. So can you just give me like 2 minutes? Maybe I'll just get that.
Okay, doesn't matter. Take it on the laptop because we're on live.
Okay.
Okay, so right now, as you see, like this is the electronics and the prototyping space that we have here. We have all the electronics components. We all the electronic soldering machines, and everyone's favorite tool here, which is the laser cutting machine. You can see that. So this is something that we generally use to prototype most of our projects around here. Like this
That's
is
we call it the Death Star.
yes. So if I'm not sure if you can see that, I'm so sorry about the camera, but
That's all right.
if you notice, like this is something that we generally use
Bob.
to prototype all of our stuff. Yeah.
You want to show him all the shield prototypes, the laser cut ones at the
Oh.
back, real quick? The 21 different design iterations.
Different prototypes, if you can see.
Nice.
Yeah.
These are all
Those are all-
laser cut at the time.
So yeah, that's
Yeah.
that's the prototyping space for us. And then yeah, this is the main room that we have. That's the main space. A lot of 3D printers around here. Those are all the
So that's a
3D printers.
100-year-old Portuguese house.
Yes, and
That
does
we're in.
anyone live there, or is it entirely makerspace now?
No, it's pretty much the makerspace. We're hoping to put some bunk beds there so you can come and stay with us.
Nice.
So yeah, so the 3D printers are running right now. We're trying to print another enabled device right now.
Ah.
We can earn another badge, right? So those are the rooms. That's the team
You want to
room.
take them to the wood shop?
Yeah,
That's more exciting, I think. Let's go into the exciting parts. Yeah, there we go. Let's go into the wood shop. That's our home, and also an old Portuguese dining room.
Nice.
So that's the wood lab here.
Great.
And yeah, that's the oxygen concentrator that was built.
Hmm.
You want to show them the roof? That's the best part, no, of this. In fact, we're in Portuguese house, so you got to see the roof. All right. Then the rest of the space, there is a little backyard, there's a kitchen, and there's a back room, but we can't. Do you want to?
Yeah, I think
But
I'll
Wi-Fi might
get
not work
disconnected
there right now.
Yeah, the Wi-Fi might just get disconnected.
And then there is a beautiful backyard that we have outside where we have a little stage and everything, but those are for another time, I think, during the day. That
Nice.
you'll have to come and visit us, actually. It's better.
Okay. Well, it's great. It's great. And you've been there for what, about a year now?
Yeah, it's been about a year about a year since we moved into
That's
this
great.
space.
That's great. And Vaibhav, you live nearby in Goa.
Yeah, that's
But
right.
you're
We
at
all
your
live
home now.
within the 5 to 10 minute radius.
How nice. How nice. Well, so I did want to ask you a little bit more about your work on PPE and then your work on the oxygen concentrators. Is that chapter over now? Have the conventional commercial challenges now filled the need for masks and shields?
That's correct. So when it came to PPE manufacturing, India became the second largest in the world now after China, because we are a manufacturing country. So I don't think there is any problem for PPE. However, at that time, because there was a huge supply shortage and people could not,
Yeah.
I mean, big companies were thinking about injection molded solutions and things like that, which take a lot of time. However, we were able to quickly use an existing network of laser cutters, because there is enough laser cutters around in India for marketing solutions and different small industry. So we were able to use that to sort of support it in the beginning, at least, to create enough some face shields. But that part is over. In terms of the oxygen concentrator as well, a lot got imported, a lot of stuff happening over there. So our designs were used by 30 manufacturers to actually create their own versions of the oxygen concentrators, and they're open source. So the M1902, it's been certified as well in India. So a lot of folks have been using the designs to create different projects out of it, and you guys can too. I mean, everything is documented, so you can just go to the centerpiece and get the documents.
So
It's all on GitHub. And
sorry,
the last part is,
let me interrupt for a second, because, one of the chapter leaders and the other people who sort of think about the e-NABLE network as a whole are always wrestling with the relation between our community of volunteers and the traditional institutional mechanisms that make society run. And I think you just said that on the one hand, in India, you filled an immediate gap for PPE, but India is a major manufacturer of PPE. So my first question is, have industry in India recognized the value of maker spaces and of the maker community and volunteers as a social safety net when institutional systems fail?
So in India, we had a lot of tough time making folks understand, and even now, and they do not get it. But so, for example, a lot of ground bodies and stuff like that, we really, I mean, a lot of people were talking about it, what we were doing, and we spoke to a lot of people in the higher ups, but they still funded centralized manufacturing and going into like funding existing factories to scale up. Versus what we were saying is that, that's fine, but you can support this ecosystem or this open network and a decentralized network. But folks don't understand it that well. But however, folks outside understood it. We managed to get Schmidt's Futures to come on board. We did manage to get the European Union to support it. And then we did get a few other organizations that really respected it. But in India, we haven't had luck yet getting through to, the media talked about it quite a bit, like everyone was talking about it in the media, but getting folks to really understand at the government level, we haven't had that much luck yet.
That's good to know, and keep fighting. But so then there's this second chapter where you created an open source oxygen concentrator. And I heard you say that there are now a dozen or more manufacturers who are making commercial products and using your design as a basis.
Yes, so when we created that network, now we have about 150 other labs and small manufacturers joined that consortium while we were working on oxygen concentrators. So a lot of them were able to use the designs and the documentations to build what they're building. And that was quite exciting. And and even till now, actually, a few of them are building them. So yes.
And when you say manufacturer, are these shops that turn out one or two a year, or hundreds?
I'm talking. Yeah, they're going into large scale manufacturing. They're like small companies who are doing other things. So for example, we're actually putting together a video about this as well as we speak. But it'll take some more time because I'm trying to get the videos from every other space that managed to use these designs and build things. But what's exciting is that like, for example, there's a 3D printing company called Fractalworks, and they manufacture 3D printers in India. They started putting together a manufacturing line of oxygen concentrators and were able to prototype them. There were other small entrepreneurs who were already running like different sort of manufacturing plants, and they started building these and prototyping them. And once they figured it out, they're looking at manufacturing them. At least like they've already manufactured maybe a few hundred and going into more depending on the demand, or ready for more, at least when it comes to demand.
And this is a loaded question, but what do they give you in return? Do they acknowledge?
That's always
do they
tricky,
acknowledge
right?
your design? Do they thank you? Do they support you? How does that work?
Yeah, I mean, yes, definitely. In the sense that some of them have been part of the community and have been giving back and everything. Some of them obviously don't, and we know that as well. Those people exist and they take what they can and move on. But what's exciting that I feel about it is, in general, and that's why that's one thing that we're trying to do is build that video as well, to try and put together that knowledge. It's slowly building an open source ecosystem. And I think in the short-sightedness, yes, maybe we did get the credit that we should have possibly maybe even gotten, because they did manufacture or they did take it forward. But that was our thought from the beginning. We wanted to create a project in the space of the oxygen concentrator when the pandemic happened, to be able to open source it so we can share that knowledge and learn more about it. We did it from a learning mindset, not from a manufacturing or a profitability mindset. And we did get support from different kind of people, like, good organizations supported us and funded it. Internationally in the open source ecosystem as well respected the fact that we were able to build something like an oxygen concentrator within about 6-7 weeks, and open source the designs, and that was respected. So for a small makerspace that's sort of brewing out of India in its own ways, it's a big thing, right? To also
absolutely
collaborate with the open source ecosystem around the world, people like you, people like other people, and that's what's really exciting, right? At the end of the day,
I agree. It's we don't do it for the credit, but the credit helps ensure that people understand what you're doing. So it's an interesting puzzle. I'm not complaining. I'm not even.
And it's appreciation within our own community, right? We all believe over here in open source, and we all appreciate each other's work, and that's beautiful. So and at the end of the day, we weren't. A lot of the times, the journey of building is so much more rewarding, and doing those.
That's right. That's the other thing. That's right. Manufacturing is work. Making and inventing is something else. It's for some of us, that's what we're there for, not for the financial reward. Well, listen, I'm very excited about the possibility that the same kind of social entrepreneurism that you're doing can kickstart an e-NABLE network in the entire subcontinent. So let's talk about that a little bit. We've had several conversations over the last few weeks. You clearly have got the skills and the expertise, and by the way, the potential contacts to companies that might want to take some of our designs and make them in higher volume once you have helped us figure out what is the most appealing approach to these devices for the Indian subcontinent. And we've begun talking about a program that would help get this up to speed. And I have in front of me your email in which you laid out sort of a couple of talking points for what it would take to make this happen.
Before we move off the topic of the oxygen device, Alexander has a quick question in the chat.
Thank you.
So I can read it, or Alexander can just ask it. I'll just read it. He says, I think one of the biggest worries with the decentralized communities is the insurance of quality and safety. So he's interested in how you guys can manage to keep the quality and safety of a device like an oxygen concentrator, and how that has worked for you guys in India.
Amazing. That's actually a great question, because the reason why actually we built the oxygen concentrator was to fight that same question. So that's, if you watch the video, that's exactly what we're talking about since the beginning. And we've been, so the organization that we were working with was the Center of Distributed Manufacturing at Cambridge University. So Professor Mukesh over there has been really working with us on this same question, that how do we look at QA/QC of distributed manufacturing and of what do you call it, especially medical grade equipment being distributed manufactured. But it's a very big, complicated problem, honestly. The way that we did not completely tackle it, and we're still learning, and we're trying to figure it out, starting with simpler projects that are not medical grade equipment. And the folks at Cambridge University are trying to build an app as well to try and sort of take photographs on the process and things like that to validate, and building a framework for it. But what we were able to do, however, during the oxygen concentrators is to share a design that was, in our case, we just simply got the certification for it. And then we were also sharing that design. So what happened is that the other folks who did it, had to get their own certification for their own design through the same body, which is the Indian body, CITESCO. So it wasn't that they had our certification valid, especially for an oxygen concentrator. You need certification before you sell it. So that has to be done. In the case of face shields, however, you didn't need certification, and you were sharing the designs and people were just making it. And over there was definitely a bigger question of QA/QC and things like that, because of the fact that the quality wasn't matching everywhere. And how do you maintain that? So I hope that sort of answers the question, but we don't have a complete answer to it. It's a great question and something that we all need to work on as a community to figure it out together. And happy to involve the guys who we've been working with to answer this question.
Why not have a facility that's an official entity, an officially recognized medical entity to check the devices? That way you still have the distributed manufacturing, but you also have the medically approved checkups of the devices.
Yeah, great thought. Because again, that's taking existing, what you're trying to say is that take existing QA/QC processes and put it into this, right?
Yes and no. My issue is not with the processes per se, as with the accountability. Just because your design is technically approved doesn't mean that in manufacturing, you're not going to make a mistake and make a very bad product.
Correct, 100%.
Right. So having this this third party, well, not necessarily a third party, but this different entity actually do all the checkups and be properly approved with the local government and the local authorities, lets you distribute the manufacturing as much as you want, because the final accreditation and the final insurance comes from a valid entity, not from some random maker.
Well, and it sounds like what Alexander is mentioning is the way that it works with hand devices is also ideally with an occupational therapist or physical therapist, sort of as a part of the puzzle. But again, it sounds like you guys are trying a bunch of different things to move forward in the direction of supporting some of the gaps that exist within India and within just national healthcare in general. So sounds like
no, but that's a great thought actually, and something worth exploring, which is like having sort of a centralized body to approve, but having a distributed network to manufacture, and that sort of approves them individually. But that's sort of what the certification bodies do, but they're just much more tedious to deal with. If you think about it, I mean, as a small manufacturer, you go to the certification body and then deal with them and tell them that, hey, this is what I made. Give me manufacturing approvals, and I will go ahead and manufacture it. So yes,
it's a good point, Alexander. It's not clear that that Vaibhav or I or other people in the maker community, well, in our branch of the maker community, are particularly interested in the bureaucracy and paperwork required for a reliable QA and certification authority. But the architecture of centralized design, distributed manufacturing, and then centralized QA certification and distribution is an interesting model, but it's an example of the kind of thing where you'd need really good partnerships between institutional and non-institutional partners. And as we have been discussing already, that's not fully cooked yet, and it's not going to get fully cooked until our respective strengths and appetites are understood by each other. So let me use that, if Ben will let me screen share. I am now co-host. Okay, so here's what I want you to be focusing on. So their application for e-NABLE chapter is likely to be approved today. They've done a number of experimental devices and been quite innovative. Now, Vibav suggested that we could prospectively bring e-NABLE on board as an outreach partner for their Sustainable Development School program, which we haven't talked about yet. And we will certainly be happy to spread the word about the program in your neighbor and chapters. So that's step 2. And do you want to just say a little bit about the SDG school and how you think e-NABLE would fit in?
Sure. So the SDG school program started about 9 years back as a Indo-French collaboration to sort of bring together students, entrepreneurs to work on the Sustainable Development Goals. And since then, UNESCO has been a great partner in the program. UNDP has been a great partner in the program, and a lot of other organizations. And what we've really been trying to do is bring together a very diverse group of designers, makers, creators together to look at the SDGs and start working on them, learn about them, figure out what, and start building solutions for it. And inclusivity is one of the SDGs to look at. Quality education is one of the SDGs that we look at. So the e-NABLE chapter or e-NABLE hand fits beautifully into inclusivity, into education, into so many SDGs. And having folks from the community to look at some problems in that area would be super cool. So just to give you an example of some projects that came out of this program in this area, one of them was called Make It Loud, where folks were able to take sign language and convert it into speech using sort of pressure sensors, flex sensors on their fingers. There was another one which is called Identify, where folks could, blind folks could figure out who's standing in front of them. Again, a bunch of those examples are there in the project section where you can see some of the old ones. We've only documented 30. There have been over 150. We just try to document the rest. We're just building this website as we go. So that's basic thought. Some projects you'll be able to see. So that's where we thought that, I mean, the e-NABLE community also is very like-minded and would be fun to work together on this and have a problem statement around disability as part of this program, so that people who become part of this program
Sure.
can start working on it.
I agree. I'm having some strange problem actually downloading this, but that's okay. Let's not be distracted. And so I see that that's actually a 10-day program, and you seem to have people coming from all over the world to participate.
That's right. So now, thanks to the fact that it's also online, it happens in a hybrid format where we work on a online program, but folks who would like can come to our makerspace or go to another makerspace for the second half of the program if they have access, and start being the designating prototyping officers of their team to prototype over there. So we're trying to run it in a hybrid format at local makerspaces, but at the same time, if you don't have access, that's also totally cool, because there are enough projects that you can build which are completely digital as well and don't need prototyping. So that's also fine.
That's great. So I want to go back to your plan of action, which is you have suggested, and this is something we want to advertise, and we brought it up in our town hall meeting on Friday, and there was great enthusiasm for it. You're suggesting that we have a maker in residence at Makers Asylum funded by e-NABLE for a total of 6 months. And that person would focus not just on the making of hands, but also on reaching out to contact local hospitals in Goa, mapping the demand, and sort of helping to establish the culture and the practice, which I think is a great idea.
Nice. Because I thought if there is a dedicated person who's actually looking at it, and as a intern or a student volunteer who really, for them as well, it becomes a great portfolio project that they can showcase when applying for universities or other things going forward. For e-NABLE as well, and us as well, we have someone in the ecosystem who's dedicated to this. And what could be really cool is if there are more of these later on, they can all be also connected to the larger community to do more things, which is what we would like. And we thought that that'll make it a little bit more sustainable for us as well as a lab to have somebody at least get a stipend or a basic,
Sure.
bread butter salary to make sure that they can focus on building a project like this.
I agree. I'm wondering whether, so the outreach component that you've identified is absolutely the critical one. I think it's greatly to your credit that you're thinking about connecting to the network of people who will use these devices and provide medical support for the people who would use the devices. I'm wondering whether you think it would be more challenging for an outsider, someone not from India, to play that role, or whether they would sort of gain some attention because they are outsiders trying to play that role of making connections to hospitals and perhaps to medical centers.
I think that should be fine even if it's an outsider, and it might be more fun. I don't have an exact answer because this has to be tried and tested, and it also depends a lot on the person and his skills of like talking and making sure he can do that. And so, for example, like a while back, we did this project called the Maker Auto, and you can go in the project section and see that toward the end. And that was completely done by an American citizen called Kobe. And he's a maker, and he basically took an auto rickshaw and converted it into a mobile makerspace, and then went to almost about 15, 20 schools and did like robotics workshop. But he was, this one, Maker Auto. And he, the cool part was that, I mean, he figured it out. He called schools up and told them, I want to come and do a workshop. The school said, yeah, why don't you come? We would love to host the Maker Auto. And he went and did the workshop, and we supported wherever we could. And these workshops happened, and people made a lot of electronic things. And this auto was also completely built by him at the Makerspace, at Maker's Asylum. Yeah.
That's great. That's great. So if you do you have, if you will, internal candidates for this fellowship, or are you thinking that
we did sort of put it out there and to just gauge interest, and there were a lot of people who were super excited by the way. So we already have a network of universities and stuff, but it would be super cool to get somebody from outside as well, because that way, what could happen as well is a beautiful exchange in makerspaces from folks, international makers coming to an Indian makerspace. That will bring a lot of like diversity and culture and change of thought. So we're totally excited to have somebody from outside come in and apply for this. Yes.
Cool. All right. So we will develop that. And finally, you've invited us to give some presentations about e-NABLE. We would be happy to do that. But we will develop this into a proposal. And I think you should go ahead and see if you have any internal Indian candidates who either have or could get some of the clinical connections, which are going to be so important here. I connected you with Mukta at Jaipur, and actually it might be really interesting for the intern to visit Jaipur, because that's, world famous, world's largest prosthetic clinic.
That would be cool.
But finding the right person to be able to do not just the mechanical process of building hands, but the social process of setting up partnerships with the medical professionals and the recipients is going to be the trick. Doesn't have to be someone who already knows how to do it, but it does have to be someone who is quite familiar with is quite willing and has good social skills to play that role as an ambassador.
As long as he has that motivation. Yeah, correct.
That's right. That's right. Okay, so that is a plan.
Great. We'll, once we are okay with everything, then we can definitely open it to our community and some of the universities that we work with in India. And a lot of students are looking for capstone projects or like their final year projects. This would fit in
Sure.
beautifully. And if you can find somebody who's super passionate about this subject, has personal and other motivation to look at it, it would be quite exciting to get him on board and work with him.
Well, great.
And I do
So-
have, thoughts on some folks already, but we will still open it out and get some application.
Well, for the people you have thoughts about, whether they become the fellow or not, a really good thing to begin right now would be to find some cases and do a few in order to get realistic about the challenges and the opportunities. And to that end, we have had a number of requests from India that we haven't known how to fulfill. And I think we have time for Ben to open up e-NABLE Web Central and just point out that now that you're involved with the e-NABLE community, we probably can find a number of people who would be good test pilots, if you will, for the devices as well as for the processes that we're talking about.
That would be great.
So here we are.
And so Ritesh is from our side going to be leading most of this. He's been a part of Makers Asylum's team for a very long time. So maybe he can also get involved already. He volunteered to sort of look at this and work with us on this. So I will. He'll be part of our meetings going further and things like that.
So Ritesh, your next step is to visit and register with e-NABLE Web Central.
Okay.
You see the URL right there, and you'll be able to find a number of requests that have come in over the years that have not really been serviced. Ideally, you'll find some that are within reasonable travel distance from you, because interacting with the volunteer is going to be helpful. What happens, Ben? Does that map candidates?
It does. Bob has mentioned that there's quite a number of cases that have come in India. I see only one that pops up on this map, but I know that.
Well, that's right, because actually e-NABLE Web Central is a second step. We've had other queries, and we can ask Bob to retrieve them, that have come in through the help desk from people in India saying they want devices, and we weren't able to take it even as far as getting them into e-NABLE Web Central. But Ritesh, if you give us your email, we can make that connection.
Here's another one in India, I see.
I'm extremely sorry to butt in, Ben. Sorry, yes. John. Really sorry to do this right now, but my parents are waiting for me for dinner, and I was visiting them, and I completely miscalculated today.
That's okay.
Can I have Ritesh be there with you for the rest? And because he's anyway leading the project, and I'll get everything. And if I may just exit this call as of now, if that's okay.
One condition, please give our regards to your parents.
Yes, I will do that. Thank you so much. Yes.
Thank you. Bye.
Okay, thank you very much. Bye-bye. I'll talk to you soon.
Good. Okay, so I've got your email here, and Ben and I will put it on our to-do list to connect you with Bob Rieger. Actually, well, we can look at the map, but what are the urban centers closest to Goa?
The urban centers would be one North Goa, and the other one would be Panjim or Madgaon. Like it's okay. I'll just put that down here. It's Panjim and Madgaon, I would say. Or else just search for North Goa. just north or south Goa. Just Goa is majorly separated into two different districts.
Mhm.
So anything should be close to us. I mean, the whole of the state is
There you go.
no longer than a 40-kilometer radius, so it's fine.
Okay.
Now, it's something to keep in mind, John. The team at Makers Asylum has networked with all these different partners through the M19 initiative. So really, they've got a lot of India covered in terms of existing partnerships, active maker spaces, people that are interested in supporting the healthcare system.
Yep.
So I do think that finding something in Goa would be great, but maybe not necessary when you have that kind of a network that exists.
I agree with that. But as we are trying to bootstrap this and make Makers Asylum sort of the source of expertise and knowledge, it would be good to be able to start that way. If we can, we will. If we can't, we'll do something else. So we'll follow up by email on that, Ritesh.
Yes.
And Ritesh, you're likely to be our main consultant. Can you tell us a little bit more about yourself and what your background is?
Okay, so I'm a mechanical engineer. I've been working as a product designer for a quite long time now, and I've been associated with Makers Asylum since the past 3 years, slightly more than 3 years now. And since joining Makers Asylum, I've kind of shifted to being a jack of all trades. Slightly tilting to designing in CAD, to learning electronics, learning all the technology, doing wood workshop, and prototyping a lot of these projects. So in the past 3 years, I would say, a lot of these projects, some of those projects have been crazy enough with no intention of converting that into a business model, like developing PAPRs, that and all of those other projects we have been a part of. M19 Collective, that's one. There's a lot of different projects, specifically during COVID. Now I think that was the catalyst for our community, for us to build various projects and also to get the whole community together. So,
and Ritesh, you have been a product manager, but you're now full-time at Makers Asylum?
Yes, now I'm full-time at Makers Asylum.
And when you were managing products, what products were you managing?
So I basically worked as a freelance designer for various companies. Primary industries were HVAC industries, humidification machineries was what I built. Secondary was automation, which I served. So basically designing and prototyping for them. But back then it was not me who actually did the work. It was me who connected with the industry guys. And told them how it has to be assembled, how it has to be cut, how it has to be built, and all of those things. But since I've been a part of Makers Asylum, it's all hands-on, understanding the technology that we have right in our hands, right. So that's what we've been up to, using the laser cutting machines a lot, 3D printing machines. I mean, it did not really seem so easy back then. While I was designing, while I was building for freelancing for various companies, for various large companies, it was all like we just need to outsource the whole process. But now, if you ask us to build anything, fix anything, it's possibly a piece of cake. You just give us a screwdriver and any of these machines, and we're just going to build it for you.
That's pretty interesting. Alexander is still on the call. Alexander has been a leader and the lead designer in our current effort to build the latest and greatest, and I think quite innovative e-NABLE hand. And it's about to get to the point where we need people to build and help us test it and help us refine it. And so that's something that you and yours might be able to be very helpful with. You've got the capacity to rattle things off and to put them together and to give us feedback. So Alexander, I'm going to suggest that we think about recruiting Ritesh as a beta tester for our first testable complete prototype. That would be the point to get started that way.
At the very least, it would be important to have multiple makers test the printability and the ease of assembly.
That's right. And I see that you have a wide range of 3D printer kinds there. So looking at different devices and materials would be very helpful in helping us make sure that we've got the parameters dialed in adequately for a good range of devices. Cool.
That can be done from our side. Yeah, we do have a lot of different printers. Some of them are like the latest one we have got is a Creality, which prints at 45-degree angle. So the Naomi Wu version of it. That's a beta version, but yeah, they've been kind enough to send us a 3D printer. There's also another one, a Delta printer. Maybe we can. It's still being assembled right now. But yeah, that's also another thing that we can look at for different types of 3D printers. So that's
Cool.
also one of the other 3D printers that we have access to right now.
That's great.
And also, yes, just like Ben mentioned here, we do have a good network. Most of them in Mumbai, Bangalore, and a lot of other cities. We can also ask them to come on board and get their help as well in these matters.
Great. Great. Well, I think we have the next steps, and I think we've learned a lot about the capabilities of our newest chapter. I don't know if there's anything else Ben would like to do in the few minutes that remain.
I'm trying to think. One of the purposes of the chapter leaders roundtable is to connect the dots between chapters. Do you have any questions for any other chapters? Is there anything that any chapters can follow up on to connect to you guys? And
not right now, but this is kind of a little new for us. So I
Sure.
have gone for designs and a lot of those things. So maybe in the next chapter meetup, I can just come up with certain feedback. But right now we have not really, because in the past 2 or 3 days, I have been focused on getting the badge. So that's kind of been the main focus. So we have been sharing all of those designs. So I have applied for the experimental badge, but unfortunately, I also cannot see the access for the chapter badge award. By the way, I am assuming that's because we still do not have the experimental badge, the maker badge.
That's right.
right.
That's right. So you're working through the process. By our next meeting, you will have come out the other side of that process. And if we're lucky, you'll have found a few potential recipients to work with. And then we can talk in more detail about what you're doing.
Right. And I do wonder if maybe in the next call, if we can get Kiri in the call, it would be great to show you guys his matching system. I think as soon as we start finding some partners in India, especially people within the healthcare system that might have some potential device users, being able to map that out regionally, working within India could be really helpful. And e-NABLE France works through the whole country. It's really one chapter working with a bunch of partners in a similar way that you are. Same with Turkey. So their model could be something that suits the next steps for you guys, maybe even more than the US model, which is not so coordinated as those other national chapters.
Right. I suspect the process is going to be, ideally, from my point of view, the process would be there are a few people, perhaps Ritesh, from Maker's Asylum who become familiar with the device and the recipient fitting process, the one-on-one process, ideally with a medical contact in the picture. But let's face it, most e-NABLE devices are delivered to recipients who participate as test pilots without a medical contact. We know that that's not optimal, but it's common, and it's a good way, I think, to start with the base operation. The next step would be to, now that you know what you're talking about, to begin developing relationships with some medical professionals, as well as, and this is probably the job of the fellow, as well as to begin exploring the local network and who the collaborators could be. Once we've done that, that's when it's going to become really important to have a system for queuing up and distributing recipients and maker knowledge in order to scale this up. So it'll be a phased process, but I think you're the right people to do it, and I think we know how to do it, and we have a good plan for going forward. So we'll see you next month.
Sounds good.
And I'm excited about this. I think it's going to be really good.
Maybe some homework for other chapters who are watching this video to look through the Makers Asylum's other projects. I think there's a lot of stuff that touches on assistive technology that's outside of sort of the common prosthetics that most chapters are working with, things like wheelchairs, things like Braille and sign language support. And even the repair cafe and the DIY hour, some of those things, I think.
A lot of great programs.
Right, a lot of great programs, a lot of things that could inspire other chapters. And I do feel like there's been a lot of efforts, like with e-NABLE France, to expand beyond, primarily prosthetic devices to sort of the wider assistive technology within e-NABLE. So great stuff, really innovative platform that you guys have set up. So thanks so much for joining us today.
And a pleasure to meet you, Ritesh.
Thank you. Thanks so much.
Bye.
Great. So we'll see you next month, and maybe just to end this call, I'll share really briefly our other events coming up. So if any of this,
John, Ben, can you stay for a minute afterwards? I want to run something by you.
Yes, we can. That's fine. Let me interrupt for a second with a special announcement. I am involved in some of the other SDGs right now, in particular ones that relate to food sufficiency and climate restoration and so on. And I'm going to be talking to a potential intern on that project, who is, of all things, from Salsette. Oh no, is that her name or her location? Is Salsette, Goa a location?
Sorry? Hello? I'm sorry, I kind of lost you there.
Is Salsette, Goa a place?
why don't you put it in the chat, John?
I'm working on it.
Okay, in the chat.
Salute.
It's correcting me.
I'm not 100% sure about that. Is the spelling correct? Salsette.
Now it is. Yes.
Sounds like it is in. I think that is in Goa. Salsette.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. So maybe we have some connections, some other connections in Goa to explore. That was a distraction, but the point is we're going to start trying to make connections, and we'll see you next time. And Ritesh, if you want to sign off, we can. We'll see you next time.
Sure. Thank you so much. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you, Ritesh. And a quick overview of the other events this month. We have the new member meetup coming up this Friday with Evan Blockman talking about different ways to participate within the e-NABLE community other than printing devices. And then to end off the month, we have Alexander, who's in this call with us, is going to do a workshop on a new print in place design of the Phoenix hand and some non-uniform scaling that can take place using parametric parameters. So thanks so much. Join us the next 2 Fridays.
Yeah, absolutely. Bye. Have a good day, everyone.
Bye, everybody.
See you. Did John leave or?
Yeah, and we can follow up in another call, but I'll